I think you need a hug. Can I hug you? The words cut through the cold stillness of Central Park like a soft echo from another lifetime. Daniel Whitaker turned his head slowly, shaken from the heavy fog of his thoughts. A little black girl stood in front of him, cheeks rosy from the chill, one mitten missing. Her hair was tucked under an oversized knit hat, and her steady eyes locked onto his. "What did you say?" Daniel asked, his voice rougher than he intended. "You look like you need a hug," she repeated, as if it were the simplest truth in the world. Daniel blinked, caught off guard. He wasn't used to anyone speaking to him so directly, especially not a child. His life had narrowed into boardroom memos, solitary dinners, and long nights where grief weighed heavier than silence. "I'm Chloe," she announced proudly, shifting from one boot to the other on the icy ground. "My mom says hugs don't fix everything, but they help." Daniel let out a short laugh. "That's pretty wise. I'm 5. She added quickly, then lifted her chin. "And a half." For the first time in what felt like forever, Daniel smiled, genuinely smiled. "Well, thank you for the offer, Chloe." She glanced at her wrist, fiddling with a colorful bracelet woven from yarn and tiny beads. After a pause, she slipped it off and held it out to him. "You should wear this. It helps me when I'm sad." He hesitated. The bracelet was clearly handmade, frayed in places, and obviously treasured. "I couldn't take that from you." "It's okay," she said softly, cutting him off. "I can always make another one." Carefully, Daniel took it. She reached for his hand and slid the bracelet over his glove until it rested on his wrist. It looked awkward against his expensive overcoat and the $1,000 watch he wore beneath, but somehow, it felt right. "I'm Daniel," he said gently. "It's very nice to meet you, Chloe." She grinned. "Want to meet my mommy? She's right over there." Daniel followed her finger to a bench nearby, where a woman sat bundled in a heavy coat, a paper bag of groceries at her feet. Her eyes never left Chloe, sharp and protective. "Come on," Chloe urged, tugging his hand. "She's nice. You'll like her." Absurd, he thought. A wealthy CEO being pulled through a snowy park by a 5-year-old. And yet something about her presence chipped away at his defenses, like sunlight breaking through winter clouds. As they approached, the woman rose. Her gaze flicked from her daughter to Daniel, cautious but polite. "Chloe," she said firmly, "we've talked about wandering off." "I didn't go far, Mommy." He looked like he needed someone. Her eyes met Daniel's. "I'm sorry." She can be a little forward. "It's all right," Daniel replied, his voice softer than he expected. "She's something special." The woman nodded slowly. "I'm Rachel. And thank you for not being a threat." Daniel gave a faint smile. "Of course." Her eyes drifted to the bracelet now snug on his wrist, then back to him. "She only gives those when she means it." "I figured," Daniel said quietly, touching it with his fingers. "I'm honored." They stood there for a beat before Rachel gestured toward the bench. "Would you like some coffee? It's instant, but it's warm." Daniel nodded, and they sat together. The coffee came from a battered thermos, a little burnt and overly sweet, but somehow comforting. Chloe nestled between them with her own cup of cocoa, content. "You're not from around here," Rachel observed after a moment. "I live just a few blocks away," Daniel said. "Upper West Side." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "You don't really strike me as the park bench type." "Not usually," he admitted. "Today's different." "Anniversary?" Daniel blinked. "Excuse me? You've got that look," she said gently. "Like someone remembering something painful." He hesitated, then nodded. 3 years ago, I lost my wife and my son. Car accident." Rachel froze, her breath catching in the cold air. I think I might have treated them." Daniel looked at her, startled. "I used to work at St. Luke's Emergency Care. I was on rotation that night. Mother and child both critical." The woman wore a silver chain with a gold clasp, with a locket inside. Daniel's chest tightened. Yes. Rachel's voice dropped. I stayed with her as long as I could. His throat burned as he swallowed back emotion. Thank you? I'm sorry we couldn't do more, she whispered, blinking quickly. You stayed, he said softly. That means more than you know. For a long moment they sat in silence, the winter wind rustling the bare branches above. Chloe leaned her head against her mother's shoulder, eyelids growing heavy. I used to be in nursing school, Rachel said quietly. I had to leave when Chloe came. Still hope to finish someday. You should, Daniel told her, glancing at Chloe, then back at Rachel. Some people are meant to help others. She gave a faint, tired smile. Doesn't exactly pay the rent. Daniel looked down at the bracelet again, its bright colors standing out against his dark suit. Somehow, it felt heavier now, like a promise. I'll be around, he said as he rose. Rachel studied him carefully. We're usually here around this time. He nodded, then turned to Chloe. Thank you for the bracelet. You keep it, she murmured sleepily. Until you're not sad anymore. As Daniel walked back through the snow, the bracelet snug around his wrist, the cold seemed less biting. He didn't smile, but something inside him shifted. For the first time in years, he felt the faint tug of healing, wrapped in yarn and given by the smallest hands. Rachel and Chloe were always there. Sometimes reading, sometimes tossing crumbs to the birds, but always waiting with a smile that went beyond courtesy, a smile that touched something deeper. It had been years since Daniel felt like he belonged anywhere outside the walls of contracts, deadlines, and endless performance reviews. What he found on that park bench wasn't a deal or a duty. It was presence. It was human. One chilly afternoon, with spring just beginning to tease the air, Chloe greeted him with a new bracelet. This one was bright, streaks of yellow and green twisted together. She insisted he wear it alongside the first. Daniel slipped it on, his wrist now wrapped in a patchwork of joy he carried into boardrooms and breakfast meetings alike. Rachel noticed. You don't hide them, she said, sipping from her coffee cup. I don't want to, he answered simply. She smiled faintly. Most people do. Daniel glanced at her. I spent years hiding pain. Maybe now I owe it to myself to show what's helping me heal. Rachel lowered her eyes to her hands. That's brave. He tilted his head. I think surviving quietly is braver. She didn't reply, but her silence was full, not empty. Later that day, as Chloe swung high on the playground nearby, Rachel spoke again. I saw your photo yesterday. Daniel turned to her. My photo? In the paper. Business section. Daniel Whitaker, CEO of Whitaker Capital. He gave a small nod. Most people know the company. Few know the man. You didn't tell me. Would it have mattered? She thought a moment, then shook her head. No. But I'm glad I know now. He hesitated. Does it change how you see me? No, she said firmly. But it does explain the suit. They both laughed, the tension breaking. For a moment, the air was lighter. But Rachel's smile faded slightly. I looked up the crash. Daniel's body stiffened. I wanted to be sure. She continued softly. That night at the ER, I didn't know who I was treating. But I remember your wife. And your son. He said nothing, so she pressed on gently. She wore a wedding ring. Engraved on the inside. I traced it with my thumb when we couldn't find her ID. Daniel's chest tightened. It was inscribed with, "Forever still isn't long enough." Rachel nodded slowly. Yes. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. I stayed with her, Rachel whispered, until she passed. I thought maybe someone should. Daniel's voice cracked. Thank you? Her eyes glistened. I've never told anyone that. They sat without speaking, the breeze tugging at her coat, Chloe's laughter floating from the swings. She was kind, Rachel whispered. And scared. But peaceful. Daniel closed his eyes, swallowing hard. She was the best person I knew. Rachel hesitated, then placed her hand gently over his. They stayed like that, hands together, letting silence speak for them both. A week later, Daniel invited them to lunch at a little corner diner off Columbus Avenue. Nothing fancy, checkered floors, chrome stools, and waitresses who knew every regular's name. Chloe devoured grilled cheese with tomato soup, while Rachel stuck to coffee and a modest club sandwich, refusing anything more expensive. Daniel watched them with quiet awe. His world had once felt sterile, but now it was filled with texture. Chloe giggling at crackers floating in soup, Rachel holding her cup with both hands as if grounding herself, the steady hum of connection between them all. On the walk back, Chloe skipped between them, her boots splashing in shallow puddles. Daniel glanced at Rachel. "Do you still want to go back to nursing school?" Rachel looked startled. "I think about it every day." "What stops you?" "Tuition. Time. And the fear that I'm too far behind." "You're not," he said firmly. She shook her head. "I wouldn't feel right taking help." "This isn't charity," Daniel replied gently. "It's an investment in someone who stayed, in someone who mattered when it counted." Her eyes met his. "You don't have to do this." "I know." Chloe tugged at his hand, oblivious to the weight of the moment. "Can we get hot chocolate?" Daniel smiled. "Only if we get extra marshmallows." That night, Daniel sat by the fire in his penthouse. The television stayed off. Instead, he pulled out an old journal his wife had once used. It hadn't been touched since the accident. He flipped through the worn pages, birthday plans, grocery lists, doodles of their son's curls. Then he found a note tucked inside, written in her familiar hand. "If something happens to me, don't close off. Please let someone in. Even if it's not like us, let it be something good." Daniel sat frozen, staring at the words. Then, slowly, he set the note beside the photograph on the mantel. He touched the 2 bracelets on his wrist, colorful strands now worn but strong. The past would always remain. But maybe, just maybe, it could walk beside him without pulling him under. And Chloe's bracelets, they weren't just holding his wrist. They were holding him together. The following Saturday, Manhattan's sky was the color of pewter, heavy with the promise of late snow. Daniel stood outside the little market near Rachel and Chloe's shelter, holding a modest bag of groceries. He hadn't told them he was coming. Something inside told him this wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up. Inside the bag were fresh apples, a block of cheddar, a loaf of sourdough, a box of herbal tea, and Chloe's favorite, those colorful marshmallow cereals that left sugar dust across a child's smile. It wasn't much. But it was thoughtful. And that mattered. He found them, as always, on the same bench near the swings. Rachel sat with a book, her shoulders squared against the cold, while Chloe counted pigeons and tossed them bits of bagel. "Afternoon!" Daniel called. Chloe's head shot up. "Mr. Daniel!" she squealed, racing to him with open arms. Rachel looked up, surprise softening into warmth. "You found us on a Saturday." "I had a feeling," Daniel said, crouching to catch Chloe's hug. Rachel rose, brushing snow from her coat. "We don't usually stay long on weekends. The shelter opens late. Gets crowded fast." Daniel handed her the bag. "Just a few things. Thought you might like something different tonight." She hesitated before taking it. "You didn't have to." "I know." Chloe peeked inside and squealed. "Marshmallow stars." Rachel's gaze softened. "You remembered. Some things are worth remembering," he said. They sat together, sipping from the second thermos of coffee Daniel had brought. Chloe built little snow castles beside the bench, her imagination running free. "She's the reason I'm still standing," Rachel said suddenly. Daniel turned. "After I dropped out, there were days I didn't think I could do it. Single mom, no degree, no safety net. Just her and me. But every time she smiled, I knew I had to keep trying." "You did more than try," Daniel said quietly. "You stayed." Rachel's eyes fell to her gloved hands. "That's the hardest part. Not just showing up once, but showing up again and again when no one's watching." He nodded. That kind of love, it's rare. Just then, Chloe bounded over, breathless. Mr. Daniel, I made you something. She pulled out a folded piece of construction paper from her coat. Inside was a crayon drawing, 3 figures holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. One wore a blue suit with brown hair like his. Another wore a purple dress with black curls. And the smallest had 2 bracelets and a huge grin. That's me, she explained proudly. And Mommy. And you. Daniel stared longer than he meant to. You're quite the artist. I made it for you, Chloe said. He folded it carefully and tucked it into his coat pocket. Then I'll keep it close. Rachel checked her watch. We should head back. It's almost dinner at the shelter. I'll walk you, Daniel offered. The shelter was just 2 blocks away, wedged between a laundromat and a tax office. Its brick was weathered, its halls buzzing with fatigue. Inside, people waited quietly, clutching bags, lining up for meals that were more comfort than cuisine. As Rachel signed in, Chloe clung to Daniel's coat. Do you ever get scared? She asked suddenly. He crouched beside her. Sometimes. But being scared isn't the same as being alone. I feel better when you're with us, she said. He didn't know what to say, so he squeezed her hand. At the door, Rachel paused. Thank you? For today. For caring. Daniel smiled gently. It's not effort. It's a choice I want to keep making. That night, back in his apartment, Daniel pinned Chloe's drawing above the fireplace, beside the photo of his wife and son. He stood for a long time, staring at both. The next week, he made a quiet call to a friend at the community college. Asked about re-enrollment in the nursing program. Arranged an anonymous scholarship. Told himself it wasn't charity. It was simply seeing something worth investing in, someone worth finishing what she'd started. The following time they met, Rachel looked tired, but lighter. I got a call, she said. From Westboro College. Someone set up a scholarship in my name. It covers the next 2 semesters. Daniel raised his eyebrows. That's incredible. She narrowed her eyes, playfully suspicious. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Me? He shrugged with a smile. I might know someone who knows someone. She laughed softly. You're impossible. I'm persistent. Chloe tugged his sleeve. Does this mean Mommy gets to be Nurse Rachel again? Yes, Rachel said, her eyes bright with tears. It does. Daniel bent down. And your mom's going to be the best nurse this city has ever seen. Can I be her assistant? Chloe asked eagerly. Rachel smiled at both of them. Sweetheart, you already are. That night, as Daniel walked home through light snow, the city shimmered under the street lamps. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was walking back into an empty home. He was walking towards something good, something real. Something that began with a bracelet and a hug. On a rainy Thursday morning, Daniel arrived at Whitaker Capital's downtown office. His face wore the same mask he'd worn for years, focused, composed, unreadable. But inside, something was different. When Daniel stepped out of the elevator, the receptionist's eyes flicked not to his polished coat or gleaming shoes, but to the 2 bright, hand-woven bracelets snug around his wrist. He let the glance pass. Let them wonder. Mara, his executive assistant, fell into step beside him, heels clicking. Board meeting at 10. Lunch with the Cargill investors at noon. And your brother called twice about the foundation dinner next week. Reschedule the lunch, Daniel said without breaking stride. Mara blinked. Sir? I'll attend the board meeting. After that, I need the afternoon. She hesitated, her clipboard halfway raised. May I ask why? Daniel's smile was faint but real. Because I promised someone I'd be at the school office by 1:30. Mara paused, the weight of his words softening her professional edge. Very well, sir. When he entered the boardroom, conversation stopped. No one spoke, but Daniel knew what they were seeing. He still looked every bit the CEO, sharp suit, steel in his posture, But something had shifted. He wasn't the same man they'd known for years. There was still power in him, but now it was threaded with soul. After the meeting, he returned to his office. In the top drawer was Chloe's crayon drawing, 3 figures holding hands beneath a bright sun. He let his eyes rest on it before taking his coat. Outside, rain blurred the city, making it feel smaller, closer. By 1:30, Daniel stood at the front of a neighborhood elementary school, only blocks from the shelter. Rachel had called the night before. Her first orientation session for nursing school overlapped with Chloe's parent-teacher conference. She hadn't even finished asking before Daniel said yes. Inside, Chloe met him with a smile that erased every chart, every stock point, every hollow meeting. "You came?" "I said I would." She grinned and grabbed his hand, leading him into the counselor's office. Mrs. Polk, a kind-eyed teacher in her 60s, adjusted her reading glasses as Daniel introduced himself as a family friend. She didn't look displeased, only curious. "Chloe is remarkable," she began. "Bright, curious, and deeply empathetic. She helps our quieter students feel safe enough to open up." Daniel's chest warmed. "That sounds like her." Mrs. Polk paused, her tone shifting. "But there's something else." He felt it instantly. "Go on." "She's mentioned being afraid at night. Not of anything specific, just fear. She dreams her mother disappears. Wakes up crying." Daniel swallowed hard. "She doesn't show it in class. But she feels deeply. I think she picks up more than people realize." When the meeting ended, Daniel walked Chloe home through the drizzle, her small backpack slung over his arm. He didn't bring up the dreams. Instead, he asked about her books, her favorite lunch, her latest drawings. She answered each one with the same passion as if they were matters of state. That evening, he found Rachel outside the shelter. She looked tired but not defeated, the kind of exhaustion that came with progress, not despair. "How was orientation?" he asked. "Exciting," she admitted. "Overwhelming, but right. She's doing well in school," he told her gently. "But she's been having some tough dreams." Rachel's face softened. "I know. Some nights she clings to me so tight I can barely breathe. I try to comfort her, but—" "You're doing everything right," Daniel said firmly. They walked in silence for a stretch, rain hushing the city around them. Then Rachel stopped. "You didn't have to go to that conference. You run a company." Daniel met her gaze. "That company can run itself most days. Chloe can't." Her laugh was soft, disbelieving. "Still, thank you. This is more than I ever expected." He hesitated. "Have you thought about moving out of the shelter?" Her shoulders tensed. "I'm not suggesting anything dramatic," he said carefully. "Just a studio apartment I own near the park. Empty, safe, furnished. No strings. You wouldn't owe me anything." Rachel folded her arms. "You do realize how that sounds?" "Yes. That's why I'm saying it carefully." He held her gaze. "You deserve stability. And Chloe deserves a door she can lock at night." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Let me think." "Of course." The following Tuesday, Daniel pressed a small set of keys into her palm. They felt heavier than they should have, one for the lobby, one for the apartment upstairs. The building stood quietly near 86th Street, tucked between brownstones and a corner bodega. The apartment was modest, 1 bedroom, a living area, a kitchenette, and a bathroom with good light. On the table, Daniel had left a vase of yellow tulips. Rachel turned the keys in her hand. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure." Chloe clutched her stuffed animal, bouncing on her toes. Daniel crouched. "Want to see your new home?" Her eyes lit up. "Can I pick my bed?" "There's only one," Rachel said gently. "Then we share," Chloe said without hesitation. Inside, she threw herself onto the futon, boots and all, giggling. Rachel entered more carefully, scanning the space as if waiting for the floor to fall through. "You can stay as long as you need," Daniel said. "There's no clock." Her breath trembled. This feels like too much. You've given me more than you realize, he replied. This is balance. Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't think people in your world did things like this. I didn't either, Daniel admitted. That evening, they ate pizza on the floor, paper plates balanced on knees. Chloe clinked her cup of cocoa against Daniel's sparkling water and Rachel's chipped mug. To new beginnings, Rachel said. To safe spaces, Daniel added. To extra cheese, Chloe shouted, grinning. Later, when Daniel rose to leave, Chloe hugged him tight. Are you coming tomorrow? Every day, he promised. Rachel walked him to the door. You know this isn't just helping me. You're changing her whole world. She changed mine first, he said quietly. As he left, Rachel pressed the keys in her pocket, her eyes following him into the night. The next week felt fragile, like something learning how to fly. Daniel visited daily. Groceries, homework help, or just quiet evenings with Rachel in the glow of a second-hand lamp. One night she spoke in a voice lower than usual. I had postpartum depression, she confessed. After Chloe was born, I didn't tell anyone. Not even the nurses. I thought being strong meant staying silent. I'd walk her for hours at night, both of us crying. I loved her so much it scared me. Daniel listened, steady. Grief's like that too, he said softly. Loving so much there's no space left for anything else. Her eyes found his, the space between them alive with unspoken understanding. Then came the call that shattered it. A rainy Thursday mid-meeting. His phone buzzed. Rachel. Can you come? It's urgent. What happened? The shelter manager came. Said I broke rules. If I don't return immediately, they'll notify social services. Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. Did they come to the apartment? No. They followed us from school. Said I endangered Chloe by moving without clearance. Her voice cracked. They don't have that authority. Daniel snapped. They have paperwork. Protocols. You did nothing wrong, he said, his voice hard. You gave her safety. By the time he reached the apartment, Rachel was pacing, panic sharp in her eyes. Chloe sat curled on the couch, confused. They're trying to scare you, Daniel told her firmly. We'll fight back with ours. That night he made 3 calls, his lawyer, a trusted social worker, and a court liaison. By morning, the threats vanished. But something inside him shifted. Rachel no longer felt invisible. She felt hunted. And for the first time since handing over those keys, Daniel felt pure rage. Not at her. Not at himself. But at a system where doing the right thing could still feel like trespassing. He looked down at the faded bracelets on his wrist, frayed but unbroken. They weren't symbols anymore. They were vows. And he wasn't going to let them break. The next morning, Daniel rode the elevator up at Whitaker Capitol, his reflection staring back at him in the mirrored walls. Suit flawless, face composed, but beneath it, a storm churned, hot and slow. He'd built empires, negotiated deals across continents, commanded billions. But nothing had ever made him feel this furious, this unwilling to yield, as watching a mother and child be threatened for daring to choose safety. They had tried to rattle Rachel before, but this time it cut deeper. They hadn't just gone after her. They had used Chloe. When Daniel stepped into his office that morning, Mara looked up from her desk, concern flickering across her face. Everything all right, sir? Daniel gave a tight nod. I need the best pro bono family attorney in the city. Today. Mara hesitated. We already have a dozen on retainer. Not for us. Daniel interrupted. For someone else. And I want someone who doesn't blink at red tape. The weight in his voice stopped her. She straightened. I'll make it happen. By late afternoon, Daniel sat across from Robin Clean, a sharp-eyed attorney with a reputation for exposing broken custody cases and tearing through systems designed to trap single mothers. She listened as Daniel laid out Rachel's story. Her expression didn't shift, but her pen kept moving. She's living legally in private housing? Robin asked. Yes, Daniel said. And the shelter is threatening to report her for leaving? They claim she abandoned process. That she skipped protocols. But she did nothing illegal. She gave her daughter a safer home. Robin's jaw tightened. Typical. Shelters lose funding when occupancy drops. It's not about safety. It's about spreadsheets. Daniel's fist clenched under the table. Robin leaned forward. I can file a protective injunction. It'll keep CPS off their backs while we formalize her status. But I'll need her full cooperation. Every detail. Even the hard parts. She'll give it, Daniel said without hesitation. She's strong. Robin's eyes narrowed. Strength doesn't stop the system from targeting her. Especially not when you're a single black mother trying to make it on your own. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence said enough. That evening, Daniel arrived at the apartment with a folder under his arm and fatigue in his bones. Rachel opened the door barefoot, dressed in a soft gray sweater, the scent of rice and garlic drifting from the kitchen. You're early, she said. I brought someone, Daniel replied, stepping aside as Robin appeared. Rachel stiffened, not in fear, but with guarded hesitation. Rachel, this is Robin Clean, Daniel said gently. She's one of the best family attorneys in the city. I asked her to help. Rachel crossed her arms. I didn't ask for legal help. I know, Daniel admitted. But you need it. Robin stepped forward. Miss Alvarez, I understand the shelter's been intimidating you. I've seen this before. We can fight it, but I'll need your full story. All of it. Rachel glanced at Chloe, who sat at the table coloring, humming softly to herself. I don't want her dragged into this, she said. She won't be, Robin assured her. Not if we do this right. They moved to the table. Daniel poured tea while Chloe was coaxed into her bedroom with the promise of a bedtime story later. Then Rachel began. She spoke of the eviction that pushed her to the shelter. The endless wait for placement. The humiliation of curfews, shared showers, and moldy food. The fights in the hallways that kept Chloe awake. The paperwork no one cared about. The night she first slept in Daniel's apartment, clean, quiet, safe, and realized what peace felt like. By the time she finished, Robin's pen had stopped. Her jaw was tight. I've seen hundreds of cases, she said softly. But this is unacceptable. Rachel's eyes shimmered. They made me feel like a criminal. Like wanting more for my daughter was selfish. It's not selfish, Daniel said firmly. It's the most selfless thing in the world. Robin stood. I'll file tomorrow. We'll request a hearing within the week. And if they push, I'll push harder. Rachel nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Thank you. After Robin left, Rachel turned to Daniel. I don't know how to thank you for this. You don't have to, he said. You're not alone anymore. They stood in the quiet that followed. Then Daniel added, almost too softly, when Chloe told me she dreamed you disappeared, I knew I couldn't stand by. Tears welled in Rachel's eyes. She's never told me that. She's strong like you, Daniel said. But even strong people need anchors. For just a moment, Rachel reached for his hand. Later that night, when Chloe was asleep, Rachel pulled out a worn photo, Chloe as a baby, bundled in a blanket, her own face tired but glowing with new motherhood. She saved me, she whispered. I didn't know how much I wanted to live until I saw her face. Daniel leaned back, staring at the ceiling. And I didn't know how much I wanted to feel again until I met you both. Rachel looked at him carefully. Do you think your wife would understand all this? You helping us? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, She once left me a note. Told me not to shut myself off if anything ever happened to her. Said I should let something good in, even if it didn't look like what we had. Rachel smiled gently. Sounds like she knew you well. She always did, Daniel murmured. As the night deepened, Rachel stood. I should sleep. Tomorrow's a long day. You're not alone in it, Daniel said. She paused at her bedroom door. Neither are you. And for the first time since the shelter tried to break them, something steadier took root: conviction and family, not bound by blood, but by bond. They wanted clarity. Daniel sat heavily in his chair, the walls of his office closing in around him. Later that afternoon, he found Rachel waiting on their usual bench in the park. The folded newspaper weighed down his pocket, but not as much as the ache in his chest. I should have seen this coming, he said quietly. Rachel unfolded the article, her fingers trembling just enough for him to notice. Are they going to fire you? She asked. Daniel let out a dry laugh. You don't fire a Holloway from Holloway Capital. But they'll use this against me. Call it a distraction. Question my judgment. Rachel closed the paper. Her lips pressed tight. I didn't ask for this spotlight. I know, he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes told the truth. And I'll protect you both. Whatever it takes. She looked away, her voice low. I've fought my whole life not to be someone's burden. You're not, Daniel said firmly. You never were. But shadows had already begun creeping in. That week, Daniel was summoned before the board. The conference room was a circle of quiet judgment, 12 executives watching him as if he were already on trial. The chairwoman, Evelyn Marks, spoke first. There are concerns, Daniel. About public perception. About influence. If you're asking whether I use company funds to support a friend and her daughter, the answer is no, Daniel said evenly. This is about more than money, Evelyn replied. It's about optics. Stability. Daniel rose to his feet. His voice carried a quiet power. Then let me be clear. I've never hidden anything. Rachel Alvarez is a woman who saved lives, including mine. Her daughter is as much a light in my life as any profit margin you can name. If that makes me a risk, then maybe you've forgotten the real value of leadership. The room went still. Evelyn's face didn't soften. We're not here to crucify you, Daniel. But tread carefully. This company has shareholders, not soulmates. The words cut sharper than he let them see. That night, Daniel returned to the apartment later than usual. Chloe was already asleep, tucked beneath the blanket he'd helped her pick out weeks earlier, the one scattered with cartoon planets and stars. Rachel sat on the couch, staring at a cup of tea that had long gone cold. I saw the news, she said softly. And the comments. Daniel sank beside her. People will always talk. That doesn't make them right. But what if it changes things? What if they dig into my past? My mistakes? Daniel reached for her hand. Then we face it together. Her eyes glistened with quiet terror. I can't lose Chloe. You won't, he promised. Not while I have breath. She pulled her hand back and stood, pacing to the window. The city glittered beyond the glass, cruelly indifferent. Daniel, I need to ask you something hard. Anything. If this gets worse, if staying close to us puts your future at risk, your name, your work, would you walk away? He didn't answer at first. Then, softly, I'd walk away from all of that before I'd walk away from you. Her eyes filled, but she turned before the tears could fall. Daniel stepped closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. I'm not here out of pity, Rachel. I'm here because in a world that forgot how to care, you reminded me what it means to matter. Her voice broke. I'm scared. So am I, he whispered. But we're still standing. They stood together, the hum of the city pressing against the windows, and for a moment, the noise outside couldn't touch them. Rain began to fall, soft, steady, relentless. And in the glass, their reflections stood side by side. Not perfect. Not easy. But real. The board framed it as concern. They're questioning how your recent choices reflect on the company, Evelyn Marks said evenly. Daniel stayed seated, his expression calm. My personal life has no bearing on our business. Maybe not directly, Evelyn replied. But perception matters. Another board member leaned forward. There's unease that your involvement with Miss Alvarez has moved beyond charity. That it now looks like favoritism, a personal entanglement that clouds your judgment. Daniel's voice didn't waver. Are you saying compassion disqualifies leadership? We're saying, Evelyn answered carefully, that this company was built on credibility, detachment, strategy. Your reputation is the brand. Right now, that image looks complicated. Daniel rose slowly. His words landed heavy. 4 years ago, I lost my wife and son in a car accident. Do you remember that? The room fell silent. For years, I survived on autopilot. I signed papers. Made money. Pretended it all still mattered. Then I met a little girl who gave me a bracelet and asked if I needed a hug. And I met her mother, a woman who had every reason to quit, but kept fighting. They reminded me what it felt like to be human again. No one interrupted. I won't apologize for finding purpose. I won't abandon the people who reminded me what life is supposed to feel like, not because it unsettles a few of you. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Are you saying you'd risk your seat at this table? Daniel nodded once. If decency costs me my title, then so be it. And he walked out. His pulse was racing, but for the first time in years, he felt clear. That night, he told Rachel everything. Her first reaction was panic. You can't lose your company over me, she whispered. I'm not losing it, Daniel said firmly. I'm taking it back. She studied him, searching his face for hesitation. There was none. I don't want to be the reason, she said finally. You're the reason I'm still standing, Daniel told her. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of truth, of weight, of defiance. What now? Rachel asked softly. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded drawing. Chloe's latest from school, a house, a tree, 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright sun. I think we keep going, he said. Step by step. Rachel's smile was small but steady. I can walk with that. 3 days later, the headlines broke. Daniel Holloway had voluntarily stepped down as CEO of Holloway Capital. The press speculated endlessly, but those close to him knew the truth. He wasn't stepping down. He was stepping forward. The apartment grew quieter in the weeks that followed, but somehow more alive. Daniel cooked more dinners. Chloe taught him terrible dance moves to pop songs. Rachel studied late into the night for her nursing exams. And one evening, Chloe wandered into the living room with the faded bracelet in her hand. It's getting loose, she said. Daniel knelt in front of her. That's all right. Things change shape when they stay with us too long. But that doesn't mean they stop mattering. Chloe tied it snugly around his wrist again. I still like it. Daniel smiled. Me too. In that moment, the noise of the world disappeared, leaving only what was real. Family, not by blood, but by choice. Summer crept in slowly, warm and forgiving. Life didn't turn easy, but it became livable. Tangible. Real. Daniel filled notebooks with short reflections about grief, courage, Chloe's knock-knock jokes, Rachel's quiet strength. He didn't miss boardrooms or quarterly reports. The only thing he sometimes missed was the illusion that his old life had meaning. Now he had something better. Rachel passed her final exams with honors. When the results came, she didn't cry. She just stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, and finally exhaled a breath she'd been holding for years. You did it, Daniel said, stepping in. I did, she whispered. For her. They hugged. No speeches. No applause. Just the quiet acknowledgement of mountains climbed. That same week, Chloe handed them a school flyer. We're doing a play. She beamed. I'm a sunflower. You've always been one. Rachel teased, kissing her forehead. Daniel circled the date in his calendar. Front row, he promised. The auditorium buzzed with nervous children and fidgeting parents. Daniel sat beside Rachel, holding a bouquet of daisies almost bigger than Chloe. When she stepped on stage in a cardboard petal crown, his throat tightened. Midway through, Chloe spoke her line, simple but profound. Even when storms come, the sun is still behind the clouds. When the curtain closed, she searched the audience until her eyes found theirs. Daniel waved back, flowers forgotten in his lap, his heart louder than the applause. Days later, the three of them strolled through Riverside Park. Chloe ran ahead chasing Bubbles, while Rachel walked quietly with her arm linked through Daniel's. "Everything still feels fragile," she said. "Maybe because it is," Daniel answered. "But fragile things aren't worthless. They just need care." She hesitated. "And your next chapter?" "I've been thinking," he said. "I want to start something new. Not a business, a foundation. For people like you. Like Chloe. People who fall through the cracks because no one bothers to look down and help them up." Rachel stopped. "You're serious?" "I already filed the paperwork," Daniel said. "It's called the Bridge Project." Her eyes softened. "Like what you said in court. About finding the bridge between the halves of your life." He nodded. "This time, I want to be the bridge." They sat on a bench as Chloe bounded back, cheeks flushed. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked. "Only if I get 2 scoops," Daniel teased. 3, Chloe gasped. Rachel rolled her eyes. 1 each. The sky suddenly opened, rain falling warm and heavy. Daniel whipped off his jacket, holding it over Chloe's head as they all ran laughing down the sidewalk. They didn't run from the storm. They ran through it. A year later, the world looked different. Rachel wore a white coat, working at the city's public clinic. Chloe, now in 3rd grade, filled notebooks with stories that always ended with hugs. Daniel, no longer a CEO, stood with them as a partner, a father figure, a man who had traded wealth for worth. The Bridge Project thrived quietly, no headlines, no flash, just real help. One life at a time. On their first holiday together, Daniel watched Rachel cooking in their small kitchen while Chloe danced in socks across the floor. Music hummed low. The smell of roasted vegetables filled the room. He raised his glass. "To the family we found in the places we least expected." Rachel lifted hers. "To the storms we survived." Chloe lifted her juice. "To sunflowers." And in that tiny kitchen, in the glow of an ordinary night, nothing extraordinary happened. No tragedy. No twists. Just peace. Just love. Just home. This was the story of Daniel, Rachel, and Chloe, a reminder that family is chosen as much as born, and healing often begins with the smallest act of kindness. A bracelet. A hug. A chance. Years later, the bracelets had frayed to threads. One sat in a small wooden box on the mantel, alongside Chloe's sunflower drawing and Rachel's graduation photo. The colors had dulled, but the meaning hadn't. Daniel still wore the other. It no longer looked out of place against his shirts and blazers. It looked like it belonged, like it had always been part of him. Life wasn't flawless. There were bills, long shifts, scraped knees, hard days. But every evening, when the three of them sat down at the same table, laughter and stories spilling between bites of dinner, Daniel knew he hadn't lost his world in that car crash years ago. He had found another one, different, but no less real. Not built on power. Not built on wealth. Built on love, on resilience, on the quiet courage of a child who offered a hug and a bracelet on a cold winter's day. That was how their story ended, not with headlines or applause, but with something far rarer. With peace. With family. With home.